Alright, what's up everybody? Today I'm on my electric bike and I just thought I'd make a video talking about why you might also want to look into getting an electric motorcycle. So right now I'm just on my Zero FX. There's a lot of different electric bikes you can get. Some are faster, some have more range, and we'll get into that, like what type of electric bike you might want for your particular use case. But first of all, oh shit, had my turn signal on. But first of all, why would you want to get an electric motorcycle? Well, they are a cheap way to get into electric vehicles. For an electric car, you're looking at like what, around 40 grand for a Tesla Model 3. But for, an entry-level electric motorcycle, you're looking at spending around $10,000. So, pretty big cost savings there, and if you just need a fast vehicle to get around, if you don't have to travel terribly far, and you don't mind getting wet when it rains, the typical drawbacks with a motorcycle, an electric motorcycle might be a good option for you. And electric bikes also have some inherent benefits over just normal gas bikes. So if you're just in the market for a motorcycle in general, you might want to consider getting an electric bike. So there are some pros and cons, obviously. One of the benefits with an electric bike is maintenance. You do not have to do practically any maintenance on an electric bike. The Zero FX that I have right here, the only maintenance I have to do is just oil the chain. Other than that, just bleed the brakes every year or two, and that's pretty much it as far as maintenance. I don't have to change the oil, change spark plugs, tune the engine, replace crap in the engine if it blows, fix carburetors, whatever, none of that. So they're virtually maintenance free, and that's a pretty huge benefit. And a lot of electric bikes don't even have a chain. They use a belt drive, so that makes it even simpler. So maintenance is practically zero. They're also pretty damn quiet. They don't make a shit ton of noise. That's a nice thing if you don't want to have to wear hearing protection. Some bikes are pretty damn loud, and in order to ride them safely without damaging your ears, you have to wear hearing protection. So that's a nice thing. Also, if you're into off-roading, doing enduro, motocross, trials, that sort of stuff, an electric bike is really good because you can get away with riding in areas that you wouldn't normally be able to. A lot of people will get pissed off if you ride in a nice quiet area on a gas bike that's super loud. But with an electric, they make virtually no noise, nobody really gives a so you have a lot more opportunities to ride your bike to begin with. Also, if you're just doing normal riding out in the street, you won't piss off your neighbors, with a super loud vehicle. So that's a bonus. Another benefit with electric bikes is the torque. Electric motors produce a lot more torque than gas engines. And you'll find that electric bikes they just feel more powerful. They accelerate faster. They just feel a lot snappier. And that's one of the things that makes them a lot more fun to ride. Now, with all of that said, there are some drawbacks to consider, and I'm sure the main thing most people really think about when they're considering getting any kind of electric vehicle is the range. And I'm just about to pull into an electric vehicle charging station here, so we'll continue this discussion after I plug myself in. So here I've got my bike charging over at the public charging station, and the biggest factor for most people in deciding to get an electric bike is the range and how long it takes to charge. This is going to really vary greatly depending on the type of bike you get and what kind of money you're willing to spend, because just like with electric cars, bikes that have a longer range, that charge faster, they cost more. So this is a lower end bike. It's for off-road enduro.
So the battery is pretty small. It's a 6.5 kilowatt hour battery. That gives you around 50 kilometers highway range, around 140 kilometers in the city. And with the aftermarket charger I have here, generally takes around an hour to an hour and a half, depending on the charging station, to charge from 0 to 100%. And that shouldn't really discourage you from getting an electric bike. You should just consider your own personal use case scenario. You should consider, the actual specifications of certain bikes and what kind of money you're willing to spend. So for my bike, the Zero FX, I spent, I think about 11 or 12,000 Canadian for it. And 140 kilometer city range, 50 highway, that's pretty adequate for what I normally use it for. It can be a little inconvenient on longer rides where I have to charge multiple times, but, under normal circumstances, I'm usually only traveling around like 60 to 80 kilometers per ride, so under normal circumstances, I don't even ever have to stop to charge. So if that's the type of normal riding you do, then, a cheaper electric bike, that has a lower range, that's perfectly fine. And again, you're saving a lot of money by going with an electric bike rather than an electric car. Now, if you do have to do a lot more long distance riding, there are bikes that are a lot better for that sort of thing. So you might want to look at something like a Zero S or a Zero SRF. They have much larger batteries. They have, I think, 14 kilowatt hour batteries. You get around 150 kilometers of highway range. And they have pretty good chargers. They charge relatively quickly. I think with those, again, it takes around an hour to an hour and a half, depending on the charging station, to charge those bikes. Or you can go a step up. You can go with something like a Energica Ego or a Lightning Strike. Those bikes have bigger batteries, they have DC fast charging, and they can charge from 0 to 100% in about 30 minutes. So, depends on the kind of bike you're looking at, depends on what kind of money you're looking to spend, depends on your particular use case. Don't let the range thing and the charging thing really affect your decision. Just consider all these factors, what you're actually going to use the bike for. And, there are electric bikes out there that probably suit your needs.
So after hearing all of this, and you're interested in getting an electric motorcycle, you might be wondering what bike would be the best for you to get. So to start off with, if you don't need a bike with a ton of range, you only need a roughly 100 kilometer range, you don't want to spend too much money, I'd say the Zero FX or the FXS would be a good option. And if you want something like a dual sport or supermoto, again, FX or FXS, good option. You get a decent amount of range. They're pretty powerful bikes too, 46 horsepower, 78 foot-pounds of torque. They're really fun. That's the bike I'm riding right now, the Zero FX. And I can personally say it's a great bike. It's fun, very reliable, haven't had any issues in the 2 years I've been riding this. I've ridden it all year round too. I've ridden it in, the summer, winter, in the snow, and it's held up great. And one of the really good things about it is it has a lot of accessory ports. So I have 2 USB chargers, and I also have a set of heated grips. So if you want to add some accessory power stuff like heated grips, USB chargers, or a charger for a GPS or whatever, it's also a good bike. I think they started at around 10,000 American. Depending how, what options you get, it might be more expensive. But a good option for a good, entry-level bike. Now, if you want something with a bit more range, a bit more power, that can charge a little faster, I'd go for a Zero S or SR or a DS or DSR. They're pretty much all the same bike. Minor differences with the suspension and crap like that. But they're more expensive than the FX, but you get a lot more range. They have roughly about 130, 140 highway kilometers, which is pretty good. You can get pretty far with that. They charge in roughly an hour to an hour and a half, depending on the charging station, which again isn't too bad, especially considering the amount of range you get out of that. But, you know, they are a little more expensive. Keep that in mind. You also do want to consider the size of the bikes as well. They are a little small. When you look at them, you know, online on Zero's website, they look like big bikes, but they're actually pretty small. So if you're a bigger dude, you might want to look at some different bikes. But, you know, if you're an average sized person, they're a good option. Now, beyond that, you have Energica and you have Lightning Strike. So Energica, they're an Italian company. They make a sport bike, and they also make a few other like sport touring naked bikes. They're a good option. They're extremely powerful. They have a very high top speed. They accelerate extremely quickly. They'll go from like 0 to 100 in 3 seconds. The only big issues with those bikes are they're expensive. They're around I think they go for 22,000 American-ish, like depending on the model. They're heavy as they weigh almost 500 pounds. And other than that, like, the range isn't great. They get roughly 100 highway kilometers. They don't have quite as much range as the Zero bikes, and they're more expensive. So again, you might want to consider all these factors, you know, if you're kind of deciding between a Zero or an Energica. Now, the one huge benefit Energica has over the Zeros is they have DC fast charging. DC fast charging just allows you to charge much faster. The Energica bikes will charge from 0 to 100% in about 30 minutes, whereas again the Zero bikes, they'll take about an hour to an hour and a half. So you're cutting the charging time by, you know, at least in half with the Energica bikes. And if you're doing a lot of long distance driving, the biggest factor for just getting somewhere quick on an electric bike is how fast you can charge. The actual range of the bike doesn't matter as much as how fast you can charge. So the Energica bikes, you know, they have a lot of performance, they're really fast, they can charge quickly, they might not have the best range, but that DC fast charging is pretty awesome. The only big drawbacks to those bikes are they're heavy as hell, they're around 500 pounds, and they're also expensive. Now, I'd say if you're looking for a sport, like a high-end, high-performance like electric motorcycle, like a sport bike, your best option would be a Lightning Strike. Now, you can customize these at the low end, so the entry base model. I think they start at around 10,500 American. Now, that will give you a smaller battery, 10.5 kilowatt hour battery, no DC fast charging. But again, if you just want a bike that has a high level of performance, that you don't need a ton of range, you just want like some, you know, decent highway range. I think again the entry level model, it'll give you about 100 kilometers highway range. And, you know, you don't really care about DC fast charging or anything because you don't need to go very far. Well, that's a really good option. You get a really good high-performance sport bike for a decent price considering the other options you have for electric bikes. And you can really upgrade those bikes. So you can get a 20 kilowatt hour battery. You can also get Olin suspension. So all of that will give you over 200 kilometers highway range. You can also get a DC fast charger with the Lightning Strike. So you can charge from 0 to 100% in about 30 minutes. So that is by far the best price versus performance bike you can get for an electric motorcycle. The only thing that's really comparable to it is, you know, the Zero SRF and the Energica Ego. And again, the Energica Ego, it will cost about the same as the Lightning Strike, but it's way heavier, doesn't have nearly as much range, and I don't think it's quite as powerful either. So Lightning Strike, just plain better bike. And you have the Zero SRF. Now the Zero SRF, really great bike. It's got a lot of performance, but again, it doesn't have as much horsepower or torque as the Lightning Strike. And it doesn't have as big of a battery, and it doesn't have DC fast charging. And it costs about the same amount of money as well. Again, Lightning Strike, just better value overall. I don't think you can really go wrong with the Lightning Strike. So I hope this video helped you out for any of you who are thinking of getting an electric bike. They're a ton of fun, they're a cheaper way to get into electric vehicles, and compared to gas-powered bikes, they do have some advantages. They're more reliable, they have more torque, they're just plain more fun to ride. They are cheaper, like again, you don't have to pay for gasoline. And chances are you can find an electric motorcycle that's suitable for your particular use case scenario. So, with that said, as always, keep making those vegan and electric motorcycle gains.